Leading your bulletin this hour, Eskom says it has managed to recover one unit from Matimba Power Station, but it remains unclear if load shedding will end tomorrow. Eskom yesterday announced the start of Stage 3 rolling blackouts due to boiler tube failures at some of its power stations. While the implementation of Stage 3 load shedding is set to end at midnight tomorrow, Eskom says there's a risk it could go beyond Sunday should they experience major breakdowns. And to provide us with the latest update on the current load shedding situation, we're joined by the Eskom spokesperson, Daphne Mokwena. Daphne, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. As it stands today, what is the current energy availability factor on the one hand, and what is the total capacity of outages, both planned outages and unplanned outages, that Eskom has recorded at this moment?
So, good evening, Oliver, and good evening to your listeners.
Just to remind you what Eskom had said in its statement that it published yesterday announcing load shedding. It had presented unplanned outages to have increased to 13,313 megawatts, which they note has been on a downward spiral and averaging around 12,087 megawatts from the 1st of April 2024 till the 30th of January 2025, up until 2 days ago. Daphne, do we have you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, fantastic. My question was, just to repeat it, what is the energy availability factor of the national grid at the moment, and what is the total capacity of planned and unplanned outages?
So maybe let's start by saying that the reason why we went into load shedding, Oliver, was because we wanted to recover emergency reserves. So currently, as we speak, because from yesterday we were filling up our dams, and I can confirm that 70% of our emergency reserves have been or are progressing well to be recovered. So by Sunday afternoon, we would have recovered that 70% fully, and the 30% by Monday morning. And I heard you talking about the one unit that we have brought in, yes, from Matimba, but on top of that, we have also brought in 3 units in total. We have brought about 2,455 megawatts, and we're looking into bringing about 2,866 megawatts tomorrow. So by tomorrow, we will be looking good, given that the reason, and I just want to reiterate that the reason why we went into load shedding was to give ourselves space to ensure that we fill up or we replenish our emergency reserves, which are currently, as we speak, most of them, or 70% of these are progressing well, and by tomorrow morning will be fully replenished.
Yeah. Definitely, let's get into the detail of what the published report was, the summer outlook published in August last year. It had projected that should unplanned outages reach 14,000 megawatts, that Eskom will implement Stage 1 load shedding, and should it reach 15,000 megawatts, Eskom will implement Stage 2 load shedding. As we have it on record, unplanned outages have only reached 13,330 megawatts, far below, at least 7,000 megawatts below 14,000. Why is it then that we have Stage 3 load shedding and not Stage 1 load shedding? That is to say, what is the impact of the difference of the depleted reserves that had to be replenished on the grid?
Yeah. So, and you're correct, as we have even said yesterday in our media briefing, that if it was not for the emergency reserves, we wouldn't have gone into load shedding. So remember, the emergency reserves, we need this because these are reserves that we should always have, so that because they are capacity that we can actually put into the system as quick as possible, unlike when you bring a unit back, because you have to, ramp it up, and it takes hours before you can reach maximum capacity. So with emergency reserves, you can reach that maximum capacity as soon as, possible. So you need to have this these reserves always. So our system operator needs to have this. Is always these reserves needs to be in place. So because in the last week or 7 days, we have used our emergency reserves extensively. So we ran out of the emergency reserves in as much as we had
just
enough.
Just to pause there, Daphne, why have we been using our emergency reserves in the last 7 days, given that demand had been averaging out at around 24,000 megawatts?
So demand has been averaging, but remember, you don't know what will happen because with demand as well, it can just spike. It's not something that is that you can actually predict. We do focus, but as it becomes forecasted, we forecast the demand, but as it becomes what you call it, or when it becomes overcast, we don't have, obviously the demand normally goes up. During peak hours, demand goes up, and we need to always have that capacity to be able to meet that demand.
So in the last 7 days, by what margin has the average demand exceeded what has been available?
Say that again.
Over the last 7 days, by how much has the average demand exceeded the energy availability factor?
So I don't have those numbers, but what has been happening last week is that with the capacity that we had from our generators, that is your coal fleet, we needed to supplement it with the emergency reserves, and that's to meet the demand. And that is why, and that we are allowed, but normally during peak hours in the morning and in the evening. Hence, we then ran out of our emergency reserves, and we needed that space to be able to pump water, to be able to replenish these emergencies. Because remember, pumping water as well requires that we use some capacity to pump that water into our dams.
Just two last questions I have for you, Daphne. Over the last 7 days, has Eskom been using the open gas turbines, and to what extent?
When I'm talking about emergency reserves, I'm talking about open cycle gas turbines and our pump storage. So those are what we call our emergency reserves. Those are the reserves or capacity that when we need them at peak demand, because we would have forecasted whatever the demand should be. But at peak, then you get the demand, spiking beyond what we would have forecasted. And if you don't have enough capacity from your coal fleet, for an example, then that gap that you have, you then close it up immediately with your emergency reserves so that you meet the demand for your peaking times. Hence, we then used those emergency reserves at peak hours in the morning and in the evening to close that gap, and then we obviously ran out of emergency reserves. And as I said, that we cannot operate the system without the emergency reserves. We need to always have these reserves so that we can be able to, when the demand exceeds supply suddenly, we can be able to respond very quickly, unlike if you have to, bring in a unit or return a unit into the grid, because that takes a longer to reach its maximum capacity.
Just lastly, Daphne, 70% of the reserves have been recovered, you say. Will load shedding come to an end tomorrow night, yes or no?
I would like to say yes. We will suspend load shedding unless if something major happens. But as things stand now, we are on track to suspend load shedding tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. Daphne Mokwena is the spokesperson of Eskom.